Rain drummed relentlessly against the grand glass windows of the penthouse, each drop a cold echo of the boy's own isolation. Julian Carmichael sat alone in a leather armchair, blind eyes staring into the storm as if expecting something miraculous to happen, yet nothing ever did. The world had always seemed to him a blur of sounds and scents, but never light, never color, never the warmth of sunlight brushing across his skin. His father, a billionaire whose fortune towered higher than the skyscrapers surrounding them, had tried everything: doctors, therapies, experimental surgeries. But Julian remained imprisoned in a darkness that no money could penetrate. In his rare moments of clarity, he understood the cruelty of life. He had everything, yet the most beautiful part of existence, sight, was denied to him. Be Kind Tales viewers, if you believe in hope, compassion, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. It was the first day of spring when Mara entered his life, a tiny whirlwind of energy whose laughter seemed to fracture the silence that had become Julian's constant companion. She was no older than 8, with curls the color of honey and eyes that seemed to burn with curiosity about the world. She had been sent to the penthouse that morning by a social program, an initiative Julian's father reluctantly supported, meant to teach privileged children about empathy through volunteer work. Mara, however, seemed determined not to be taught. She came with the innate force of life itself, bringing questions and chatter that filled corners of the room Julian didn't even know existed. Julian initially recoiled from her, the nervous tension of a boy who had been shielded from disappointment and failure making him stiff, silent, almost untouchable. Yet Mara did not notice, or did not care, about his blindness. She asked about the feel of rain on his hands, the warmth of sunlight, the texture of velvet curtains. She ran her small fingers along his wrist and asked him to describe the sounds of the city below. Julian, who had spent years avoiding intimacy of any sort, felt a strange pulse in his chest, a thrum of curiosity mixed with fear. He tried to resist, tried to remind himself that no one could pull him from the cocoon of darkness he had built around himself. Yet, in the little girl's fearless energy, something stirred, an ember he thought had long died. Days turned into weeks, and the penthouse transformed. Mara dragged Julian to the terrace, where the sun warmed his face as if testing whether he could trust it. She made him smell flowers, taste fruits, and trace shapes of leaves in her small, impatient hands. For the first time in his life, Julian began to remember a sensation he had only read about in books: wonder. Yet the fear persisted, the phantom of blindness whispering that he was unworthy, incapable of change. His father. Julian stumbled back, tears blinding him in the new way of seeing, a mixture of elation and terror flooding through him. Mara, with the innocence only a child could possess, laughed, clapped her hands, and pulled him close. For the first time, Julian realized that blindness had been not just the absence of sight, but the absence of connection, and this little girl had shattered that prison with laughter, courage, and unflinching belief in him. Over the following months, Julian's world blossomed. He began to see colors he had never known existed, shapes that danced in sunlight, faces he could finally recognize. Yet it was not merely his physical vision that transformed. His heart began to open. He felt emotions he had suppressed: love, vulnerability, gratitude, and a profound desire to give back, to protect, to embrace life fully. He discovered that his father's wealth could never match the richness Mara had brought into his world: simple, fearless joy, unfiltered wonder, and the unspoken understanding that human connection could cure wounds money never could. Mara, unaware of the depth of the miracle she had sparked, continued to tug Julian into adventures: art classes, music lessons, walks in crowded parks. Each day, Julian observed life with a raw intensity, noticing the small acts of kindness between strangers, the way sunlight fractured through tree branches, the trembling of an elderly man's hand as he fed birds in the square. In Mara, Julian found not just a friend but a mirror of the life he had denied himself, full of curiosity, compassion, and fearless hope. One rainy afternoon, reminiscent of the day Mara first appeared, Julian sat by the window, the sound of water tapping against the glass a symphony he had never fully appreciated. Mara pressed a hand against his arm, silent but insistent. Julian smiled, the tears that had once been a symbol of helplessness now a symbol of gratitude. He realized that life would always bring storms, moments of doubt and fear, but love, courage, and small acts of kindness could illuminate even the darkest corners. He glanced at Mara, her eyes wide with wonder at a rainbow stretching across the cityscape. For the first time, Julian understood that sight was not merely physical, it was emotional, spiritual, an awakening that required someone to believe in you fiercely enough to ignite it. Mara had been that spark, and now Julian was determined to honor it, to carry the light she had given him forward into every shadowed moment that remained in the world. As the sun began to set, painting the penthouse in hues of gold and pink, Julian's father entered, silently observing the boy he had once pitied. Julian turned toward him, eyes blazing with a newfound brilliance. He did not need to speak, his gaze conveyed gratitude, resilience, and hope. The father, too, understood something profound. Wealth could buy everything but the human heart, and sometimes the smallest hands wielded the greatest power. Be Kind Tales viewers, if this story touched your heart, support it by liking, sharing, and subscribing, because sometimes, the smallest acts of courage can create miracles that money cannot buy. Mara tugged at Julian's sleeve, urging him toward the terrace one last time as the sky blushed with evening light. Julian looked out, breathing in the city, the rain-drenched streets, the golden glimmer of possibility. He realized that the world was no longer a blur but a canvas painted with infinite hues of hope, friendship, and love. He knew now that darkness could be conquered not by wealth, not by medicine, but by compassion, trust, and the fearless heart of someone who refused to let fear dictate their life. Leave a comment below if you believe in second chances, in the magic of human connection, and in the power of one small act to change everything. Julian squeezed Mara's hand, his heart full, his vision finally alive. In that moment, he understood that sight was not just in the eyes, it was in